Hello and welcome to episode 7 of ASLA Virginia presents Watershed Moments, where landscape architects, allied design professions, and contractors and developers will gather to talk about the very complicated world that we operate in. Now, what is your knee-jerk reaction to the word lobbyist? It's probably everyone thinks of it negatively, right? Or how about lawyer or salesperson? Now, what if you learned that there are environmental sustainability lobbyists, or that ASLA Virginia actually works with lobbyists to prevent deregulation of our profession, or lawyers that are public defenders with a passion, or even a salesperson who isn't self-interested. Now, what the hell does this have to do with landscape architecture? I got into this profession myself, like many people, but not everyone, to make a positive impact to communities through thoughtful designs and to be recognized for doing something that benefits us all. Well, I am here to tell you that that may be the passion, but your chances of success diminish drastically without well-sharpened sales skills. That being said, we're going to get into today's topic of presenting like a salesperson and how the methods of sales can be applied to landscape architects. I am joined today by Jesse Barnes, landscape architect and project manager at 3 North, Richmond, Virginia, and PJ Scully, a landscape architect and planning evaluation coordinator for Virginia Beach's planning department. Thank you both for being here. A real quick kind of intro into this is we've been talking a lot about in the past 6 episodes on how we deliver messages, how we form the messages, who different types of people are so that we can understand what they might be hearing from it. And now we're really getting to where this whole program of leadership and communication has been leading to, which is presenting. And it's the impetus of how we got started with this whole leadership and communications program is that we as a landscape architect profession aren't always the best at communicating our ideas or showing people the value of the profession that we are and what we actually bring for a project or to the site or urban plan that we're working on. And this idea of presenting as a salesperson is so critical to solving that. And I think the sooner that we can accept that problem, that we are not all great at this, that we can actually start moving towards a better place. And I'm just going to start out and ask, like I usually do, Jesse, how was this week for the program? Did you actually, you were present, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What'd you think of it?
It was a really good, I'm going to call it a lecture, but it's more participatory than a lecture.
Right.
But it was really, we'll call it a lesson. It was a really good lesson. It was really challenging. We were working on our 60-second pitches to quickly and accurately and enthusiastically explain like what we're about,
Right.
Which is really hard to do, especially for somebody like me who is not in sales and not terribly practiced at it.
Did it throw you off a bit to be in that session? You're like, oh my God, I have to think of my session. What is my 60-second pitch right now?
Yeah, in the actual lesson, it didn't alarm me until the very end when he said our homework was to like hone our pitches and that we were going to present first thing next week. I was like, oh, like, because like I feel like if I fail when I had like, he gave us 60 seconds to prepare, and like if I don't do a good job then it's okay. But like I have a whole week to prepare. Like, not a good excuse to doing poorly next week.
and Mike Nally, he's a rationalist just like you, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna like drill into you like, Jesse.
No, he'll be very supportive. But I'll know when I'm not good. Like he'll let me know.
he's like very direct but no nonsense, and it seems like he does a really good job of also understanding the people that he's working with. I don't know, he has a knack for it. PJ, what do you think of this session this time?
I liked it, and part of the reason was because we got into our breakout groups, you know, with our little, okay, you've got, you know, 60 seconds, go down and see how you're going to, you know, promote yourself, promote your you know, your business, or, you know, what you can provide. And you kind of go through it and you're like, okay, you know, over 60 seconds, or you start to hesitate and think, all right, you know, what do I really want to say? And then we drop back in, and it was I've got it written down over here. It's like the 5 words. You can only use five words. And then we drop back into our groups, and it was like, okay, you start to refine it to the point where you're paying attention to detail, and you're keeping that person attracted on the other end to what you're having to say, which for me, being guardian, or not guardian, artisan, you know, you can lose my attention in like 2 minutes easily. So, but it made it really refined, and you started picking up words and phrases that people were saying, and you were like, wow, I really need that, or I could really use that, or I could see what they have to offer would be beneficial to my situation, you know. And I think, Jesse, you even said it, was it skilled at unique projects, or
Yeah.
I was
Unique
gonna ask
project
that.
experts.
yeah, unique project experts. And I was like, oh dang, like, there you go.
Jesse, didn't you ask, or was it Jared that asked, can we use phrases? Can we turn the 5 words into a phrase? Was that you or Jared?
And it wasn't me, it might have been Jared.
Or no, it's another rationalist. It was Terry. Terry said it. Terry's like, can we turn the 5 words into a phrase? And he was like, I don't know, maybe. I just think that since you and Jared and Terry are rationalists, that you were already thinking about, like, how can I best do this and be most effective? And that's why she was asking that. I knew straight away. I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty smart. I like that. That's a good idea. And it was effective, right?
Mhm. Or
Versus,
we were told it was.
say what?
We were told it was.
And you already knew it, though. You didn't need to be told that it was effective. You knew it. You're like, yeah, this is gonna win. This is the way to go. It's like, I think I just had like 5 words that I was trying to pick words that would be, how do I describe the most about my 60-second pitch with 5 words? But out of context, they're really kind of like, not much to it. You can't really get a clear picture. And then you came up, and Terry as well, and everyone. I was like, it really made a huge difference to have those in a phrase, even if you sacrificed like 1 or 2 of your words for a pronoun or whatever. Like, it was totally worth that sacrifice to do that. It's like everyone's into Wordle, like maybe not as much now, but like in the past weeks. But like, it's like, how many nouns or how many vowels am I going to have in my first word? And what's the most optimized first word to have? That's what I kind of got from that.
Yeah, and I think, like, when I think about like the end game, which is to approach somebody and be able to say something snappy to like get their attention and make them want to work with you, like, nobody remembers lists. Like,
Right.
so even though you might be able to communicate a lot of information with the list, it's not going to be retained.
Correct.
So I think, you know, if you have, like, let's say a list of 5 words that are meaningful to you, pick your favorite one and make a phrase out of it. And once you have their business, you can explain the other 4 words.
And really, like, one thing that I've learned with being in my position as sales for like a lighting company, or with the new company I've got with Forms, it's not about convincing them to work with you when you meet them at the networking event for blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the setup. Get a meeting. Like, that's the whole goal with any cold call or networking thing, is establish a basic level relationship of commonality and basically pique interest so that you can actually get a meeting. Because once you have a meeting, that's the first step to actually giving a pitch or learning more about the other person so that you can cater to it.
Mhm.
That's one of my biggest problems with salespeople is that they don't take the time to actually learn the person that they're talking to. And that was my like small 2 cents when I was in the breakout room. I was like, guys, I heard everything that you had. It was like a 60 or 90-second pitch, but it was all about you. And you can say, obviously that's what he was asking for was pitch yourself. But to me as a salesperson, that's not effective because people are looking at themselves when you're pitching to them. So I just find that interesting. And that would be a takeaway if you're trying to strategize your pitch. Actually, you want to move on? Do you want to critique my 60-second pitch? PJ's excited. Ooh, here we go. I gotta find it and pull it up. This is scripted. So
You just reminded me that I really need to work on mine.
are you nervous?
I am nervous.
This is the fun part. This is why PJ and I
Challenge.
this is the challenge. This is the challenge. All right. Does
Yeah.
one of y'all want to time me? The goal is 60 seconds, right?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go.
Pulling all that up. Hold on. I was trying to get it set here. Whenever you start talking, we're ready.
Hi, my name's Borden Edgerton, and I'm a licensed landscape architect here in Virginia, but have transitioned away from my traditional role as a designer to start a new company called Forms by Federated. We've gathered a broad coalition of site product manufacturers to assist landscape architects in finding, researching, specifying solutions for their projects. So in my time as a landscape architect, I've been strapped for time, and I knew there could be a better way to research and specify trusted products. I figured it would be more efficient to bundle complementary manufacturers under a single point of contact who is knowledgeable with the trade and easy to work with. So think of me like a free consultant that assists you from early design all the way through site installation. Now, I've already started working with several clients to great success, but I would like to partner with others that are a good fit. So there's a lot more to unpack, and you probably have questions, but I've found it useful to arrange an introductory chat where we can actually learn more about your specific needs. That way I can answer your questions more effectively. So let's exchange cards for a follow-up.
Just a smidge over.
How much? Because I was like 1 second over when I was doing that earlier this week.
7.
7 seconds. I was focused too much on my really
But,
drilling.
it was good.
So did you take anything away from it? That's the key. Like if you didn't, then actually if you were listening, and you may not have been listening like closely enough, like if we were in a cocktail party. But
So one of the things that I liked about it with having worked in private sector, you kind of bundled everything one spot, to where I can get multiple products, multiple information, and I don't have to do the work. You're doing part of that work for me.
so think of it from like critiquing the pitch though. So like, did that like connect with you? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. Even now with what I do, it's like, all right, I try and find when I get to a web page or something and the information's all over, the more you got to kind of gather and, follow the past and all that, the less interested I become. So you have all that and you've already got it organized for me. That's a win.
Okay.
It's,
But any critique, anything like, where you could have worked on this? It's okay if you don't.
Well, no, one of the things, and, we talk to our profession a lot, and I think one of your benefits is being in the profession and knowing, the process and how we get through things. But if I would critique,
If you need a few minutes, I could ask Jessie what she thought of it and then come back to you. We lost you for a second. What was that?
oh, yeah, my back, I'm kind of lagging in and out. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but I'm going to ask Jessie real quick. What do you think? What's the improvement or what was good?
So I thought your explanation of what you did was like overall very good. I think what you're doing is hard to describe in 1 minute. And so I appreciated when you brought up, like, you probably have questions. Because it's like, yes, I do. I have lots of questions. I did like that you clarified that you are a free consultant, but that brought up more questions like, how do you get paid? And but like, to me, that's just like encouraging a continuation of the conversation, which I think is your goal.
Correct.
But just specifying outright that, like, free consultation for site related products, mentioning the specific things that you help with, including specifications. Like, I felt like I got a lot of good information.
Enough to like get you interested at least, right?
Yeah, just kind of like I said, like, when you were like, yeah, you probably have more questions. Like, I was like, yeah, I have like I said, I have lots of questions. I would love to talk to you about this. Like, how can you help me save time, basically? I almost think though that, and I think this is kind of true for everybody, but I almost feel like a minute is too long.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
If it's like a dialogue, it's definitely too long. Like if we're talking back and forth.
Yeah. So and I feel that way, like when I'm giving my pitch too, like I'm just talking at you. And I know part of it is just the exercise is like,
right.
Because there's that quote that he gave us, like, if you can't say it in a sentence, you can't say it in an hour. And so that's where like the value of like the five-word pitch to me is like really, really important, because like I'm just curious, like, from all of that, like, what would your 5-word pitch be?
It wasn't 5 words, but it was one specific sentence, if I can do it in that way, because it was second paragraph. I said, think of me like a free consultant that assists you from early design all the way through site installation. That's trying to show.
Yeah, and that's the part that stuck with me.
That was me taking a lot of information and seeing that people could glaze over and then saying, I know this is a lot, but like, think of me this way. Because you're trying, as someone who is learning something new about someone, you're trying to put someone in a box. I understand that you are blah or blah. I need a keyword that connects with me. And so like free consultant, keyword, assists. And then how do you assist? Through early design, through site installation, like a timeline. That was the goal, was like, I've described a lot. And if you're not listening, here's the recap. Here's the abridged version. That makes sense. But yeah, this exercise is so critical for everyone. And I'm not going to preach or wax poetic here, but like everyone has, I feel like, if they've not practiced like a really structured pitch, they go to default mode, which is, I'm so-and-so and I work at so-and-so firm, or I've been there for 20 years and X firm we're really passionate about making your design the best. And here's the types of projects. People are just bored to tears when they hear that. And it's also not separating you from anyone else. Everyone else is doing the same thing. but that's why they default to it. I've heard this before, so it must be the formula. I'm gonna use that as my formula. And
Mhm.
that was also the hardest challenge for me with this company, because it's not done anywhere. Like, no one's doing this. And so people are like, I want to figure you out right now. And I'm like, you can't. I won't allow it because it's too complicated. We need a meeting. So like the whole goal became, instead of like me explaining what I am, to get them interested enough to set up a meeting. And that's, Jesse, you've been on the receiving end of this.
Mhm.
Speaking personally, like you're like, we can do a virtual, and I'm like, nope. You're like, can we have lunch? And I'm like, nope. Because it's about being able to connect with the person, because it's really like an intense conversation to have, and it needs to be really focused. So that's like from our past lessons, like, what is the method of your delivery? And for me, it's like, it has to be in person. Like virtual, people were like, they're gone. They're working on
Mhm.
emails.
Yeah.
They're out of there. Like, that's the hardest part though for landscape architects. How do we as a profession do that? How do we explain to someone who has no clue what we're doing as a profession? How do we put ourselves in a box at least long enough that they can be interested and realize that we do lots and lots of things, and that that's okay? That's actually a good thing. And I'm posing that to y'all. PJ, you want to take a stab at it?
Oh,
Put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
no, that's a good question. So how do we pose that we do multiple things? And I think that's the challenge that we get into. And that's one of the reasons why I liked this exercise so much. Because I think putting the time on it makes us become more efficient and really weed all of, because we can go on and on and on forever. And, it goes back to what you were saying, you almost get in that default mode. Well, I can do this and I can do that. And it's, we want to get you to where you want to be. And
Hey, PJ, you know what I always call that when people get in that mode of like, I can do this, I can do that. I call it me.
yeah.
Jesse's like,
And
oh my
Such a
God,
dad joke.
I gotta go now.
Yeah, I have work to do, guys. Like, I don't know.
These deadlines are really piling up now.
To me, it was very insightful, because like I said, all right, how are you going to get it across quickly? And it makes you think, all right, exactly what am I saying? And then we went back to the other exercise, like I was saying earlier, with, the descriptive words. And it's like, okay, well, if you can use those 5 words to get your point across, then, how can you further explain that, to where you're piquing that interest? And it was, to use the phrase, we were really just cutting the fat out. It's like getting rid of the bullshit and getting to the point, and using that as the anchor, to make that successful connection, to make that friendship, to make you feel like, it's not a pitch. It's just, hey, this is who I am. And you're creating that relationship. And I think that's really kind of critical, with a comfort level in trying to build what we do, who we are, and why we care about what we do.
And it begs the question too, do we need to explain so that the person understands what we do at that moment? Or could it be, if it's a friend of yours or your Aunt Meredith, who's like, I want you to come do my yard sometime. Like, oh,
Right.
Aunt Meredith, how would you say that to them, where you're like, we don't just do yards. We like, I think I've heard some people say like, we are like a combination of a lot of different professions, but we deal with everything outside of the building envelope. And that's pretty true. Like, we can do urban planning, we can work on some person's yard, but we can work on city parks. Like, that's a very way of broad brushing it to like, maybe we should talk about this in more detail later.
Well, and
Jesse,
I'll bring
go
this
ahead.
up just real quick. Even with going through this exercise and the vastness of what we do and the different roles that we can play in the community and in business, and in public and private. This exercise was valuable in furthering that. What we worked on this week, I don't think is the end all be all to what we're going to say. It's taking us through the process of getting that attention, creating that connection. But in my profession, I'm going to have probably a handful of these. We're going to, from talking internally, that's like with our folks from VHB, when they're talking about the internal workings and kind of having to talk to different departments within their organization throughout different regions, and the roles that the landscape architects play in those
Right. Sorry to cut you off, but I want to get you to like refocus that statement, because I think it's important, and I want you to like think about it for a second, because what I think I'm hearing, and I'm going to say what I think what I think you're saying is like, it even matters when we're working within our own departments of a company,
right.
or if you are working at government, like how do we describe ourselves to an engineer or someone that's an architect, like if we're in a multidisciplinary firm, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and as you stretch out, you may have a large firm that their Northwest district or whatever primarily uses PE on their projects for state jobs.
Because they were bought and it was a civil firm before, and that's what they
Right.
do well,
And
right?
you're in the Southeast region and you do that here. So okay, as you're acquired, hey, here's my pitch to you. Like, this is where we're at. These are the resources we have to offer. And that's going to be different from you going out to your client. And the same thing with me as I talk to different departments. Like, this is what we do, this is what we're capable of.
And remind people just real quick, you're in city government, right? In the planning department?
Planning department. And you look at some of the long range planning that we have, and it's multiple departments, putting it in, and it's, you got to collaborate that, and you got to know. And not only that, but not only is it your pitch, but it's it's a strength. You can say, oh, well, I need that, or they'll help on this aspect of it.
Like your pitch for DPU, Department of Public Utilities, would be completely different than pitching internally to planning department.
Yeah. Or even, if you're in a meeting and, we want to compete as a community, and we've got a lot of communities adjacent to us, and we also want to compete as a region, so you're going to have different aspects of it. It's like, you're not going to wear the same outfit every day.
All right, Jesse, a minute, since you've got like 5 minutes before you probably have to boogie. What are your thoughts on this? Like, how do we as a profession start to pitch better to people that might not know what we do?
So my favorite pitch that I've heard concerning landscape architecture is from a principal at GGN. And she said, I design everything under the stars.
I like that. It's also evocative.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah.
I wish I had come up with it. But to me, it's a beautiful way to describe like what we do. It encompasses, everything under the stars is essentially everything.
It's kind of like from The Lion King. He's like, Simba, everything the light touches will be your kingdom.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like
That's
it's the
what-
same vibes.
Whenever we graduate from school, like they're like, you're now going out. Everything the light touches will be your domain. I like that.
So I feel like that's a good way to describe landscape architecture to somebody who is like completely unfamiliar. And in fact, in the class that I teach, that's one, like our first lecture, like I tell them that.
Can we get
Um,
into that for a second? If you have a bit longer, just to, we have 3 minutes. Can you talk a bit about how you have approached your classes? Because everyone might not know this, but you've taken on doing some remote teaching with Ball State for their landscape department. And if you're going into that, you find that people understand or understand what a landscape architect even is.
No, because I'm teaching introduction to landscape architecture, so it's a lot of freshmen, it's a lot of students who are either required to take the class for their degree in urban planning or building architecture or landscape architecture. It's also required, or it's students from other colleges who just have an interest in landscape, and so they come at it thinking landscaping, and then I teach them landscape architecture.
Right.
So it's really, really fun, especially the first couple of weeks when we spend just like establishing like baseline, this is what landscape architecture is. And like reading their assignments, so many of them are like, wow, I had no idea like that this, and this was part of landscape architecture. Like I thought it was just like doing people's yards. And so it's really fun to kind of like see that spark of new knowledge and all of these young people.
Well, what is landscape architecting, Jesse?
Well, it takes 3 lectures to go through that.
It takes 3. Like what are what are the types of people that want to be like? What is the motivation for landscape architects?
So that's another lecture. Uh, um, it's
Do I have to pay tuition?
yes.
Yes.
God, I got to get another student loan. Jesus, I'll be paying these off.
Um,
I was like, I'm dead. They're gonna pass it on to my family members.
It actually, I didn't tell you this before, but why landscape architects do what they do is actually a whole unit.
What is a unit
Um,
besides me? I'm a total unit.
so a unit is like a collection of lecture topics that are related.
Okay. Okay.
So the unit, we'll talk about how some landscape architects are motivated by wanting to make a cultural impact because like our landscapes define our culture,
Right.
and being able to be a part of that design process, you're directly impacting our culture.
Sure.
Some people who are landscape architects are just really interested in the people side of it, where they want to design places that make people's lives better. Some people are really interested in it because of their sense of environmental stewardship. Like, I don't know if you guys had this in your colleges, but at Ball State, a lot of times we say that landscape architects are stewards of the land.
Yeah. Exactly. That's
So
a good one that should be like a throwback that's needs to be brought back to the forefront. Like that's a good stewards of the land. That's 4 words. That's getting close. We got one extra we can just do a lot with, but go on, continue.
passionate stewards of the land.
Ooh,
Um,
encompassing steward.
there's just so many options, really.
What about the
But there are
third
some people who
or
feel a strong sense of environmental stewardship, and particularly in landscape architecture, I think there are a lot of opportunities for environmental stewardship. And then other reasons too. I mean, I'm sure we all have our own reasons. But part of the classes that I teach is, hopefully inspiring some of the students to study landscape architecture.
Right. I hope that it does work. I think with you at the helm, it naturally will, and you'll probably be making a pretty big impact, which is maybe what you wanted to do with that as well.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's kind of a new endeavor for me, and I'm really enjoying it, and I hope I get to keep doing it, and we'll see.
Thank you for doing that, by the way, because I think we need more teachers out there that are able to think about this problem in a bit more new, creative light that has, like, you're not financially tied to tenure or anything like that's a pro, I think, in this situation, that you can actually be more exploratory with it and take it in a new direction, even maybe.
Yeah, maybe if it's something, like I said, if it's something that I get to keep doing, I think building on the content of the course and trying out new things, new exercises. Like, it's really fun to tell a bunch of freshmen who are not designers to go design something. Or go
Here's some
critique,
macaroni.
yeah, like go
Yeah.
critique the design of something. It's really
Make
fun.
me some macaroni landscapes, please.
I haven't told them to do that, but I could.
Get the Elmer's glue out. We're doing design work today.
Mhm.
Well, Jesse, I
Yeah.
know you've got to run. I think
Yep, I do.
PJ, you've got to, if you can stick on for a little bit longer, we'll carry forward just for a little bit longer.
Yeah,
Jesse, thank you. Thank you so much for being
Yeah,
on.
thank you guys. I hope you have a good end of this conversation.
Thank you.
absolutely.
I'll send you some books
Thanks,
later.
Jesse.
I'm going to bring that up in a little bit, but good luck.
All right. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Yeah.
All right. PJ,
What's up, man?
I wanted to say that this, like, the whole reason I love this topic so much is that it was, like she said, about freshmen who are coming into her class and they get excited about a topic that they didn't know about. Like, it's new to them. They discovered something about, like, I didn't know that landscape architecture wasn't even a thing. This is a little story from when I left the design consultant role from 2018. That was kind of what happened with me, and is what actually spurred this whole series of events. Was I picked up a job because I knew I was like a sociable person and I like to talk to people, and I had frustrations with the profession, and I wanted to get out and have like an outside look at, like, a bit of a perspective on the actual profession. And so when I got into like the sales side, I was like, great, I get to go talk to landscape architects. Like, I love these people, and now I get to help them. And it was such a match made in heaven. And then we did these exercises with Nally Ventures, and it completely connected the dots for me of like, oh my God, this is what we are completely lacking in this profession, is understanding how to communicate and to sell it. And I think that for landscape architecture, we really need to realize too that we don't just have to be the design consultant role. There's nothing wrong with it, but to accomplish real change with the profession, it's good to be in a position of influence or direct connection with how things are done as a system. For you, can you talk a little bit about your sales experience in the department? Because you touched on it briefly before, like how you cater a message to think about someone else that might get them to see value where they saw none before.
I mean, well, it's a challenge, to be honest with you, because when you get into the public sector, I mean, you're dealing with so many variables, so many different directions. I mean, you think, oh, well, you're in the public sphere, so what do you have? Like, public works, public utilities, you got planning, all that. But I mean, you get into housing, and you get into our comprehensive plans and the visioning that you have, whether you're 5 years out, 10 years out, you got the current projects that you're working on. And then you have, like I was mentioning earlier, you have your internal stakeholders that you're, kind of giving that pitch to and the value. When it gets into some of those, larger planning projects, and then you have all the variety of your external stakeholders, and just the vastness of that, you have your community advocates, you have your, your professional development fields, that are looking to, capitalize in a metropolitan area.
How siloed are these, do you think? Like, we only talk to our own, like DPU might say, like, we only deal with this and we don't care about what everyone else is doing. Like, is that part of it at all? And it can be like, it doesn't have to be a harsh critique, but like, is that a reality?
Yeah, it's a big reality. And, you have that amongst departments, you have it amongst professions. And then even within departments, you have it within your divisions, so it's trifold, if not more.
You get a lot of stay in your lane kind of stuff. And you're like, my lane is literally every lane.
Well, yes. And, it's real easy to say, oh, well, sometimes it's a challenge to talk to our stormwater engineers, because, there's figures, or you're drawn, you need to be able to quantify your end result. And a lot of times our profession does that, but in a different way, and you always hear the terminology, well, green and gray, gray for your infrastructure, green for, the side stuff. But, I think an important part with this communication too is, us not being that way, if that makes sense. Like, we're realizing that we have to essentially, with our exercises, kind of read the rooms and adapt to how we communicate. I think what's important, and I hope as we go along, we're also going to have to pay real close attention that we're also going to have to do that with how we present. And, your way is not necessarily the right way. And I think it goes big into your ability to communicate by listening and adapting, bringing it all together, and then restructuring your pitch to communicate collectively, if I'm making sense.
You are, because can I recap what I think I'm hearing? Is I think that one of the struggles that you're talking about is essentially, we go into a room and it might be focused on pure metric numbers, and you're trying to communicate not just quantitative benefits, but there are also qualitative benefits to public health, or people's mental stability, or the squirrels and chipmunks that live in this landscape that may not have like rights or a voice, but like that there is benefit that comes from having diversity and good biohabitat. Like, all these things are not easily quantified, and that's a really difficult task with bean counters.
Well, and I think what we're seeing too is, when we're all in a room and we're trying to communicate or go together, leadership isn't who wins the argument, but who can bring the room together on a collective message. And I think it goes back to what I was just saying. We're starting to learn how to read, absorb, communicate. Listening is a key part of that to pull everyone in. And I think, and it's just not our profession or anything, but I think a lot of the mentality right now is, okay, who's going to win this argument? And that's taking us away from our ability to communicate
and to accomplish change in a positive fashion.
Exactly.
I find often in my day-to-day use, this is a term you'll probably hear Mike Nally bring up at some point, but he talks about refocusing the conversation.
Yes.
because it's very easy for a conversation when it gets heated about resources or who's going to take such and such manpower, or we only have this in the budget. Like, it's easy to get derailed very quickly. And if you notice, I often, like, I've done it a few times during this, like, I will recenter the topic or conversation back to where it needs to be and remind people, like, that might be listening, this is what we're talking about, and let's make sure that we stay on track. Or I might say, this is what I'm hearing you say. That is one of my most commonly used phrases,
Yeah.
because it's something that you use as a designer all the
Yeah.
time. To a client, the client's like, I want to have bushes and I don't want to trim anything, but in the summertime, I want to be able to play on the lawn. And you need to be like, at some point, stop the client and say, like, okay, here's what I hear you saying, XYZ. Is that true? And they're like, no, I didn't say that at all. And you're like, I'm glad I confirmed that now, versus 3 weeks later when I
Down the
just
road.
presented something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, recentering the conversation is really important. And I see it all the time with sales people doing a good job of it. Like, you're getting focused on something else. Let's think about either the big picture or the small picture.
Right. You know, it's I get into that a lot, you know, on a daily. And it's like, okay, what's the that's why that five word exercise was fun, because you look at, you know, I took it from, you know, from a department perspective.
Okay.
And you know what we're looking at, you know, or what we need to focus on in getting our point across, you know. And that's what we hear a lot is, you know, it's a challenge to work through regulations nowadays. And they're confusing, they're changing, and you put everything on top of that from you know, environmental perspective with what we're dealing with down here. And you know, we have to be excited to adapt. And it's not only to our process, but also the hand we're dealt with regards to our environment. And
Well, like you were mentioning too, adapting doesn't always help everybody. And
right.
a lot of the reason you don't see adaptation or change is because there's already systems that benefit one profession or one group of people. And that's why they're incentivized to not change, because they've got, so I was listening to this, I listened to a lot of I think it's Guy Raz, who talks with leadership from the top, or no, lessons from the top. And he's talking with one of the CEOs that got brought onto Taco Bell, but he was actually before that, like with Titleist golf clubs and with others as well. But the point that I'm getting at, he found that when he joined Titleist, when it first started, and this is back when drivers, like clubs, like the one iron, or I mean the one driver, two driver, three driver, were still made out of actual wood. And Titleist was the first to make them out of like a aluminum or steel that was hollow, and that it was just incredibly better. But everyone in the industry would have to adapt because they were all making wooden products. Right. And they would at that point be either having to switch or they'd be out of a job. And that is what I see a lot of with slow change and bureaucracy, is that someone can't fall on the sword because it might discredit their whole existence. And that's tough. That's really tough. How do you approach that in a diplomatic way, or how do you phase it in so that it's not so like punch in the face, just knock them out? Like that's what a lot of people want to do because they're excited about change. You're like, let's just like ease into it a little bit, because it's going to also affect other people, and they're the ones that might have power at the top to make it or break it.
Yeah, and it's really just you know, it's kind of, I'm going to bring this up, and I think I can relate it here, but you know, person, place, and thing pops in my mind. And you gotta, you know, you look at it from that perspective, and then you look at it also from a situational awareness,
Mhm.
you know, and you bring up a good point with, you know, adapting. And I think one of the challenges that we have is, you know, everything's so fast to get to us, you know, cell phone, that, you know, that it's at your fingertips. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And I think sometimes if it's not communicated properly, that you're going to get into a decision too quickly,
Yep.
or not fast enough.
We're
You
not
know,
fast enough.
yeah. So
Catch 22 there.
yeah, but you know, it circles back around to, you know, just like today, you know, communicating. Okay, why was this question brought up? Kind of who brought it up, and where are we going with it from here? You know, and sometimes we've got so much coming across our plate that we just say, okay, someone said something, decision was made, and you just let it go. And it goes back to, you know, the beginning of our class and going through that exercise. You know, I enjoyed it so much because we did it multiple times. And the first time you did your minute pitch, you were just probably stumbling through it, trying to say too much, but not saying enough. And then just to go through it again, you know. And I think that's one thing that's important, that as we get through this class and get out of it, it's a process, you know, and our process never stops, you know, like there's always going to be something new, and we got to work to it. We got to, you know, hone our skills. And as kids start to, you know, graduate and come into the profession, it's going to evolve, and it's going to get higher and higher and higher.
Yep. I'm going to close this out, and we can chat a little bit after, but
Absolutely.
I was going to say, as kind of a closeout, is I think it was Frank in the class, someone was saying that they often just wing stuff like this because they've been doing it for so long, they feel comfortable doing that. And
Yeah.
I would like to take this last moment to bring up what you just said. Was like the beginning, you were asked to pitch something, and by the end you were asked to do it again and then work on it for after class. Like, that should be the lesson that people, if they take anything away from this episode, is if you think that you are a great communicator without any preparation, you're probably wrong. And you might be doing fine, but it might be like everyone's pitch where they just copy what they've heard before and it's not at all effective. So like, if you really take some time to think about it, you can cover all the obstacles and practice it and be really, really refined. That's important. And that's why this first session of this program was important to me as a catalyst to hopefully have future sessions available, because I think it needs to be a reminder that even people at the top, they may not be as good of a communicator as they think they are, because it's not a simple thing. It's perceived as being simple or raw talent, but it is not. It is very calculated and thought and strategic, and it needs to be empathetic to the other people that you're speaking with. And it's a lot of considerations. Some people have a natural talent, but there's always room for improvement. And starting with a fundamental series of how to do it right, that is exactly what I wanted to convey from this program, is that people got something out of it. And it sounds so far like people are. Thank you, PJ. Thank you so much.
Man.
And belated thank you again to Jesse, who was on here earlier. I'm going to close this out. Next time, I think we'll be continuing this conversation further. And I have some books and resources that I want to talk about next time, and kind of maybe more the process that I went through to get to where I am, which I'm not saying I'm at the zenith or anything, but like I've learned a few things over the years. So thank you again.
Awesome.
And
yeah,
we'll
man.
talk to everyone next week. Bye.
All right.